Well, hello, everyone. This is John Barron with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our webinar. We are discussing whether or not you need an MBA to be an entrepreneur. It's an age-old question. It's kind of a direct offset of are entrepreneurs born or can they be trained and raised? And we have to discuss this topic in the context of their schools' MBA programs. Three terrific representatives of their schools and their entrepreneurship efforts. We have from Washington University's Olin Business School, Doug Vilhard, the professor and academic director for entrepreneurship. We have from the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, Sarika Gupta, the managing director for the Zell-Zuri Institute for Entrepreneurial Studies. And we have from Arizona State University's Carey School of Business, Hinendra Chaturvedi, who is a professor who teaches both supply chain management as well as entrepreneurship. I want to welcome all three of you to our panel. Let's go right to it. I mean, do you really need an MBA to be an entrepreneur? Sarika, what do you think?
Sure. So do you need an MBA? No, right? But I do think it can increase your chance of success, right? So when you come to any MBA program, participate in the entrepreneurship programs, you'll learn a set of frameworks, a set of methodologies for all aspects of the new venture creation process. At least you will here at Ross with us. And I do think that understanding these approaches can help you mitigate risk at every stage of the process, right? And so I think that's one of the best reasons to come to a program, right? To help you mitigate those risks. I also think you'll make countless connections, right? I'm sure you've heard people say one of the biggest value adds of an MBA program is the connections you make and the network you'll have for life. So your classmates, your mentors, your professors, they could be your future co-founders, they could be your advisors, they could be your investors, right? We've seen this happen, so we know it can happen.
Or you're the guinea pigs for your idea.
Yes, there you go. And then also, I think my fellow panelists would agree, you'll never have access to more resources than you do when you're a student, right? I'm sure we can all share all the programs we have, but the access to the awards and prizes, funding, mentors, I mean, they can't be underestimated. They're huge.
Right. And I mean, the other thing about being in an encouraging, supportive culture is people are willing to tell you things you might not want to hear, but
Exactly.
things you need to hear from people who have experience in the field. And Doug, I'm thinking of you, and I wonder how many students come to you with ideas and you say, well, did you think about this or that? Which is a polite way of saying, boy, you've got a lousy idea.
Well, that's an interesting segue into that. Let me think about that. Well, you know, when I first started working here, I had previously started companies and sold them, and I'm in the second stage of my life. But I said, I'm an entrepreneurship professor, and at like a cocktail party or something, people would say, "Oh, you're an entrepreneurship professor, so your job is to tell people that their babies are ugly." That's what they would say, and I would say I have never done that in my entire life, but I will teach you how to realize that they might not be great. Or even better than that, teach you how to make them better, if you will. And those are some of the frameworks that we were talking about and such. But you know, when I think about an MBA program, I think about it as being a wonderful place to hatch an idea, actually. And you know, I encourage my students, if you will, to keep two notebooks. One for the class that they're in, right? So they're trying to get a good grade and writing down what the professor says, and the other one to apply that to their business idea. And that's another reason that I think working on your startup while getting your MBA is a wonderful thing.
Yep. And I'm thinking that Professor Chaturvedi, you think the same.
No, I do. One of the things we have in common, Doug, is I was an entrepreneur in my previous life. I started 3 companies, 2 succeeded, and the third one failed. I only talk about that with a glass of scotch in my hand. So then I came here. So the most important thing about an MBA that we teach is if you're going to fail early. Don't take $30 million in investment money and then decide and then realize, oh my God, this was a flawed idea. So if we can teach them that early on, if there are people that can tell you that, you know what, go through the due diligence, and we don't tell them, they realize themselves that, Professor, there are some problems with this idea, and we just sit back and we just enjoy the learning take effect, and they make that decision themselves, which is absolutely beautiful. And the other important thing about an MBA, something that I believe in and we teach at Carey, is entrepreneur should not be looked at only as starting a company. For us, entrepreneurship is intrapreneurship also. So we push both directions, which is both entrepreneurship as well as intrapreneurship. And most of the companies coming on campus are looking for those skills.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because I think what every school is trying to do is instill an entrepreneurial mindset to encourage, the new ideas, but also an understanding of what it takes to get something done in a big or small environment. And often that means getting stuff done with few resources, which is at the core of what entrepreneurship is. I wonder if we might just, through all three of you, explore what that journey looks like. So let's say I'm an incoming MBA student and I have a business idea and I want to use my MBA experience to incubate that idea and make it a reality. How does the journey start at the Carey School of Business, and how does it take me through to the point where, oh my goodness, I can actually launch something?
So I'll kind of add on to for your first question a bit. If students are coming in and if I'm interviewing them and if they're saying, I need an MBA, and then I'm going to use that to become an entrepreneur, then I say, you're in the wrong place. Don't come to Carey. If you want to be an entrepreneur, and if you have realized that there are certain gaps in your skill set, certain things you don't know, and that's the reason you're coming in and joining the MBA program to fulfill those gaps on your path to an entrepreneurship, then you're a perfect fit. So in that journey, I think the biggest, and I believe that the panelists will agree with that, the biggest learning that happens is within the student group. So those students working together with each other are their worst and the best critic. And they are the ones who will tell you whether you're drinking your Kool-Aid or not. As professors, our job is not to tell them. Our job is to facilitate the decision-making process. That's what we do in Carey. We will not tell them, you want to be into the sustainability industry and you want to have a startup in a sustainable supply chain area. Let me tell you elements of ethics and morality in developing country. We will not tell them what's right or wrong. We will give them that extra data point to think through the process of how they will start that company. And you know what? Once you give them all the data points, the answers come out very, very easy. And that's what we sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Sarah, could outline your journey for me?
Sure. So I think a lot of similarities, but more specifically, just with our programming, if you have an idea, you come, first thing I would say is come to us, have that conversation, and we can plug you into which programs are most appropriate. So we definitely have programs we say we'll meet you on your journey where you are, right? And so some students are just at that early stage of exploring an idea. And so we have like venture shaping programs, grant programs, competitions to help them guide them through figuring out if it's a valid idea, if it's feasible financially, all of those things. Again, to my fellow panelists' points, helping them figure that out early as possible in their MBA career, right? And then we're starting to see students who come in having already launched a business and they say they want to grow and scale it. And so we have accelerator programs and different workshops for them as well. I think one thing that we try and do is really bring in expert mentors. We actually have 4 in-house entrepreneurs in residence with experience starting selling businesses, experience in venture capital, and with product development and management, and across many industries. And so our students have access to those people, which I think they find really valuable. But then on top of that, we try to bring in new mentors each year, depending on the trends we're seeing, the interest students have, whether it's topical, like new industries they're interested in, or functional areas. For example, just as a quick example, we noticed students interested in creating consumer goods businesses lately. So, it used to be more like tech platforms, services. Now we're getting into consumer goods. And so we found a mentor who has experience with e-commerce and Shopify, and so bringing her in to meet with students has been really helpful.
That's great. And you do this under the auspices of the Zell-Lurie Institute.
Zell-Lurie Institute.
Which you are managing director of.
Correct.
Which is sort of a center to organize all of your entrepreneurial activities, right?
Correct. Yep. And so we're housed within the Ross School of Business, but we serve all U of M students, which, we think is a benefit to MBAs because it gives them exposure to other disciplines. They can create those interdisciplinary teams, which we all know is very important, and just gives them access to the industry expertise.
Right. And Doug, what is the Olin Business School approach to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I'll just take you quickly over a 2-year program, although you can do it in a year and a half and all the other variations of it. But when you first come in, we teach you to fall in love with the problem that you're trying to solve, and teach you to talk to as many customers as possible. It's much better to talk to customers than me, even to talk to potential customers. But our students, but then we ask you to we don't ask you to park your idea, but we ask you to focus on your core, the core classes of the MBA, and meet your class and explore the world and all the other parts of that, and talk to anybody you can about your idea in between classes and such. But we ask you to focus on that. Then we take you through a process of a course that really called Introduction to Entrepreneurship, really lets you dive into the types of thinking that the other panelists have been talking about. Then we have a summer program where you really explore customer discovery. Then we have our famous class called the Hatchery, where you pitch ideas on day one, form teams, and take it as far as you can. And then your final semester, we have a new class and accelerator called the League. It's taught by me and several WashU billionaires. Actually, some of our most successful alumni teach it along with me, and we really are coming out of that with venture capital conversations and such. So we're, and I'm sure the other schools too, but we have a very focused program for the folks. Not all 100 of our students want to do this, but a good 20, 30 do, and we meet them where they are and take them as far as we can.
And I think the way business schools approach and teach entrepreneurship has changed over the years. I know in the early days, it was all about simply building a business plan. And then there was the addition of lean frameworks with which to view an opportunity and seize that opportunity. And you mentioned, Doug, this customer-centric approach that you've evolved to. I mean, is that evolution apparent? Is there more to it?
Yeah, well, I think that the customer-centric part is a derivative of lean. Actually, I think what's more interesting and something I'm considering bringing to the classroom now is going from business plans to lean to now what we're starting to call fit startups, lean to fit, because of the way the market is right now. And so we're looking for business ideas that have talked to customers, but we're also looking for ones that have the potential to be profitable very quickly. And because if you can do that, if you can have a sustainable business, financially stable business, then you have more choices in terms of when you take capital and such like that. So it's ever evolving, John. It's ever evolving. But I think I'm not a big fan of business plans, but I am a big fan of business planning, if you will, and thinking through these different aspects and trying to bring into the classroom what's actually happening in the marketplace right now. It was honestly, it was a little bit easier to teach this stuff when money was flying everywhere. It's easier, but I actually think it's more fun now to really discuss business fundamentals as you go out there, because only the very best ideas are getting funded right now, and the discipline of what you learn in an MBA, I think best prepares you for the current marketplace.
Right. Although I imagine that a lot of MBA startups are kind of bootstrapped, and there may be an angel investor here or there or a relative, but generally they're not really going to the VC market. Professor Chaturvedi, do you find that or what?
So one of the approach we take, and we have been lucky that the Arizona market has been with semiconductor, EV, and it's just growing rapidly. It does take a village. And what we have done is we have created an ecosystem where we have not only advisory board, which is local VCs and angel investors and entrepreneurs, and then we have mentor board of alumni who would like to come and help students. And then what we do is that we have local, we call it venture devils. We will invest a small ideas of students, and we will fund them. And then it can lead on to larger funds. So ASU as an ecosystem allows for this incubation of ideas early on. And one of the students came to me and said, Professor, these are tough times. Should I start my business? I said, this is exactly the time you should start your business. When I started my business in 2008, at the height of recession, nobody told me that I was a fool. I was ignorant, and I started a business which I built it up to over $500 million in value. And so this is exactly the time when entrepreneurs should be starting businesses. And as an ecosystem, I'm sure the other two universities have a very strong ecosystem to support the students. But we believe that with EdSyn and entrepreneurship centers, and we are also launching an undergraduate program out of our West Campus, which is purely focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology. And the other thing which becomes important is there are many courses, for example, the Carey may not be able to offer. So we partnered with Industrial Design School and the School of Engineering to bring in those expertise to ensure that the village is there.
Right. Yeah, and I think that is a very important aspect of why, in fact, if you don't need an MBA to be an entrepreneur, it could be a very big advantage to you because you're going to be a part of an ecosystem of support and have that network of encouragement and people to help you along the way, which you may not have otherwise. Sarika, could you speak to the ecosystem at the Zell-Lurie Institute?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what I believe to be a thriving startup community in the Ann Arbor, Detroit area, so Southeast Michigan, if you will. So we partner with many of the local economic development centers and accelerator programs. We don't feel like we have a shortage of mentors or investors in our ecosystem, and so that's really helpful. I think one important thing to note with Michigan Ross is, when you attend Michigan Ross, you're attending University of Michigan, right? And we have 19 schools and colleges within our university, many of which are top 10 programs, right? It's a strong university across many disciplines. And as I mentioned earlier, that's really, I think, very valuable for an MBA student, but one that's interested in entrepreneurship, to have access to all of those different technical fields and that expertise. And then I'll just mention also University, just a little brag of the University of Michigan Alumni Network, which is the largest in the world. And I can say that those alumni are here to support our students in our programs, right? And so I've never had a situation where I couldn't call up an alum and say, hey, there's this entrepreneurial student and they need advice in this area or they need support, and they'll say no, right? Like they always say yes. And so I think there's many different aspects to our ecosystem, all of which are very supportive to our students.
Yeah, all good points. And Doug, I know in St. Louis, Olin is very much connected to the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in the entire St. Louis metro area. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so St. Louis is a city I'm very proud of. It is it's big enough to be relevant, but yet it is small enough that you can really meet all the players. And WashU is such a major factor here that it really opens doors and gets you in. So, John, you pretty much can't go through our program without meeting folks from Archangels, which is a St. Louis group that funds startups, our Arch Grants, or the Cortex District, or all the other wonderful things that have evolved here over the last 20 years. And we just really reached a point in St. Louis where we have the density of startups and founders. We also have the capital to seed it, and we also have a great universities like WashU feeding it. So it's been really fun to watch that ecosystem, and I grew my own company within that ecosystem over the last 20 years before I exited as well. So really fun knowing all of those players from being on that side of it, and also now in education. So yes, a very thriving community, but not just in St. Louis, to our, just like the other schools, but our networks expand the world. And that's really the sell of these MBA programs, really in many respects, is that network.
And Doug, Sarika made a really good point, I think, about using and leveraging students and faculty from other departments and colleges in the university to help with an idea, because we're not just talking about a bunch of MBAs getting together and launching a business in every case. In many cases, we're talking about the collision of people from the fields of health or technology, computer science, and other fields that collide with MBAs to make something happen. How do those collisions occur? Are they just merely spontaneous at Olin, or is there some sort of concerted effort or a way to bring different people together who are interested in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I think they're concerted and concerted in ways to create spontaneity too. But in those classes I was talking about, like the hatchery and the league, so our class where you pitch an idea and form a team, and our accelerator, those are not, that's not an MBA class. That's a university-wide class. So there's engineers in there, there are medical students in there, there are fashion designers in there. So so the structure of that class, if you will, and the way it invites all those folks creates that. But also at WashU, we have our MBA fellowship program, entrepreneurial fellowship program, and it's a full ride opportunity. We offer 5 of them a year, and those folks live in what's called the Lewis Collective, which is organized for graduate students across all of WashU. So you basically can't not have coffee without sitting next to a graduate student in another discipline. So I think the combination of those things, John, sort of creates that ecosystem. But if you really want to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to network. So, you know, we can set it up and we can put it together for you, but you've got to get out there and shake hands and meet people and kick ideas around. That part I can't do for you. You have to be able to do that yourself.
And at their Carey School of Business, sure, there are these collisions as well among the different students in different departments and colleges, right?
So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
This fall, I'm designing and I'm going to be teaching a course in which we are taking interesting patents from government labs that patents have been filed, but there's nothing around it to way to monetize it. So we will take that, we will bring in MBA students, have them work with engineering, because some of those patents are pretty technical, and with the design team, and start to put layers on it: customer research, viability, and market research, all the way that entire business planning exercise to see if they can monetize it. And then maybe lead into a licensing agreement with one of these federal labs, and these students can create their own startup for which an IP that has already been filed.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's fun. That's real. So I hope that example answers your question.
Yep, that's a great example, actually. Sarika, I wonder how the ideas have changed. You know, I remember there were a lot of MBAs in the day that were launching things like application companies, just putting applications out and getting them up on Apple and Google and doing that kind of thing. And then there was a day when e-commerce was quite hot, and a day when natural or organic foods and drinks became hot. What's hot today? Is it climate change? Is it social impact? Is it,
Yeah.
you referred to consumer businesses? What's hot today that seems to be getting a lot of interest from students?
Yeah, I feel like you covered most of it, but let's go through let's go through it.
Let's steal your thunder.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I do. We tend to see industry fluctuations, up and down trends over the years. I think 8 to 10 years ago, I was seeing a lot of businesses in music and entertainment. Food definitely had its moment there. Food and beverage. Started to see some of the fashion space, right? I think in the last few years, definitely an uptick in impact-focused businesses, right? Like this is where students are passionate and want to create ventures. So we're seeing a lot of that. And then I think we do see students reacting to regulation changes, right? So when like sports gambling became legal, we saw a few more in that space, then we start to see some in the NFT space as well. But I think in general, we call ourselves industry agnostic in the programs that we run. And so we still see a variety of businesses and industries represented. We just see, we do see some trending here and there. And then, yeah, I would say previously it would be more apps for sure. We still no shortage of apps. I'm sure the others would agree. People want to just put apps up on the store. But we started to see more consumer goods, and we're starting to see more service-oriented businesses like consulting. So just a lot of different ones. And then also I would say, 10 years ago, they definitely were more interested in those VC backable businesses, but we're starting to see more of those bootstrapping and what we call like cash flow businesses, which maybe they don't have a clear exit in mind yet. It's a business they want to grow and maybe stay with long-term. So we see those factors come into play too.
Right. That's a really good overview. Doug, you seen the same thing? And I know if someone came to you with a dating app, you'd run them out of your office.
Well, somebody's actually have a new spin on it right now, and there hasn't been new investment in dating apps in 10 years. So maybe it's time for dating apps. I don't know.
Okay.
I would just say I agree with everything that was said. There's a couple things that are like stuck in college. Like they'll always be in college. There'll always be something about a food, or there'll always be something about podcasting, or some kind of entertainment. Like there'll always be those staples, and that's fine. And there's a lot to learn from workshopping those ideas. I get really excited though, like people coming and saying, I want to disrupt the way primary care works in the healthcare industry. I'm like, well, that's interesting. I want to disrupt this concept that employers want to find people to work for them, but they can't find them. And candidates have the skills, but they don't have quite the right name, the right title on their resume to get picked up by the AI that grabs them. How do we do that? You're very qualified for this job, but you just don't quite have the right pedigree for it, but you as a human can do it. And how do we put those together? So those are the ones. I'll try to use examples like that early on to get people a little bit past, and another way to make granola bars and such like that. But granola's great. Granola's great. We can use all the principles that we teach to talk that through. But if we can disrupt an industry, now we're really talking. Not just for the value and wealth created, but for jobs and for the types of mentors and such that we can bring in. But yes, you're always going to have those types of things hanging around a college.
And I know you have a litmus test through which you view and assess a business idea. Can you give us a little flavor of the questions that you ask a student when they come to you with an idea?
Yeah, I will. I won't for the audience all of it, but maybe I'll do the most important one, which is it's not this actually. People think a lot of times it's the 3 T's: team, tech, and traction. Right? Team, tech, and traction. There's nothing wrong with those. They're very important. Traction's the most important of all of those: team, tech, and traction. But I kind of teach a hard truth though. There's actually another T. It's called total addressable market, which means how big is the market that you're going after? Because no matter how good you are at the other 3, there's only so many people to buy it. And is that market growing or not growing. So that's a hard truth that we have a lot of times, John. And you realize, for example, if you've got a new form of granola, you can start saying that's $1 billion industry, but the truth is that's not that big. Number one, you learn that right off the bat. Two, you learn who the players are, and three, you learn if you're not differentiated in some way, you're not going to disrupt that industry. And it's a hard truth to realize that right off the bat. So a lot of times I can tell you how big your company's going to be, how big your idea could be, just by doing the total addressable market math in my head. And that's a hard one. I made I wish I had a company that was 500 million in value. That's awesome. I sold my company for 30 million 2 years ago. And the biggest challenge there, why wasn't a $1 billion company? I thought I did a pretty good job with that company, was because I was selling to television, newspaper, and radio stations. And are they growing or not growing?
Oh.
Right? They're not growing. They're going the opposite direction. So no matter how good I am, I'm working against an escalator that's going down, and I'm trying to go up it, for example. So I just launched me into one of my lectures. But the point, though, is the market matters. The market matters a lot, and it's a hard truth to try to get across early on to students.
Right. Professor Chaturvedi, what do you think distinguishes a good idea from a bad one?
So I want to comment on one point.
Yes.
Which is your previous question about what kind of things we are seeing in the market.
Good.
I believe that there is the regions in which our schools are and the industries that are around, they will impact the kind of startups that will come out. So there is going to be some overlap. Absolutely. There are some asset-light platform businesses that are technology related that'll be across the board. But for example, we are seeing a lot of businesses that are focused around semiconductor, because a supply chain exists here, ecosystem exists here. We are seeing a lot of businesses that are sustainable businesses. Solar businesses are coming through, and students are looking at that. So even though there will be some common theme across all, and which is purely technology and platform businesses, there are regional peculiarities that will drive certain businesses. From my perspective, because I have been an entrepreneur and so has Doug, and then I became an investor. I used to do angel investing. A good idea from a bad idea. The first thing I tell my students is that show me your team. And as a matter of fact, when I teach them, are you the right person for this job? Is your co-founder your friend or your relative? You've hired them just because they are your friend. That's the starting point. And then what I tell them is, if you have an amazing team, all A individuals, then you can make a better sliced bread than somebody else. It is not that Amazon, oh yes, it'll be hard, but where it starts from is, are you the right person for that job? As an investor, whenever I look at an idea, the first thing I see is, idea, good, $30 million or $20 million or $1 billion, but are you the right person to do that? Excuse me. That is my first test.
Yep. And that's a very good first test, because obviously the team you assemble is essential to your success. There's no doubt about that. And I like the point that you made about how the location of the school contributes to the experience for entrepreneurship studies. And more broadly, I always believe geography is destiny anyway. In any one, while you obviously have an international group of students who come and students from all over the country at each of these schools, it often is true that the core of alumni are centered in and around the location of a school. And therefore, the network tends to be strongest there. And so I wonder, at Ross, for example, given the importance of the automobile industry and the auto supply industry, how your location contributes to the experience of an MBA.
Sure. So yeah, so definitely, the industries that are like the automotive industry, supply chain industries that are relevant to our community are very present in terms of that's where we will find mentors and investors and people to partner with. But I think what's interesting is, as I mentioned before, we do tend to see businesses of all types and across all industries. And again, that's where the strength of the University of Michigan as a whole comes into play, right? And so we have a top health program and medical program. And so we do tend to see a lot of med devices too, right? Like MBAs partnering with faculty coming out of the med school, helping them commercialize the technology. And so I think for us, location does play a part, but with the university as a whole, bringing in all the different disciplines, we just tend to see a variety of ideas in different industries.
I mean, the other thing about the automobile industry right now is undergoing disruption and reinvention with the electric vehicle, which has all kinds of implications for the supply chain for these.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of exciting for a student who might more naturally be attracted to disruption and change, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And many MBAs, at least who come to us, are what we call career switchers. They're looking to explore new industries, new roles. And so I think, anything that gets them excited in terms of the industries that we're exposing them to is a win for us.
Yep. And in St. Louis, I imagine fintech is a big play as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Although, John, I got to tell you, I'm also a big fan of geography. But there are still the remnants from COVID in the sense that even we're doing a Zoom thing right now, or a webinar right now. And when I first got to WashU right before COVID, I said, we've got so many great people in St. Louis, but let me bring in some people from Silicon Valley and from New York, and they couldn't come in, so they were on screen. Right. And all my reviews from students were terrible. Why don't you bring them in? Why aren't they in person? Right. Then COVID happened. Now I'm a genius because now we're connecting everybody all the time really quickly and expanding that network. So while I am very proud of St. Louis and all the opportunities that come there, it's these networks, that are amazing, and getting these amazing speakers and such like that, and connecting students even between classes real quick on the equivalent of a FaceTime with someone in a certain industry. So it's just really fascinating, John. I think how things have changed so rapidly too, that it hasn't destroyed geography, but I think it's a little bit different than we think of it traditionally.
Right. Now, I'm wondering if I'm going to your MBA program and I'm not necessarily interested in entrepreneurship, will I still be exposed to it? Doug?
Yeah, so at WashU, entrepreneurship is one of our 4 pillars here. So what that is basically saying, it's asking every class to have some element of entrepreneurship or innovation in it. So you can't escape it, just like you can't escape global and you can't escape experiential and our other pillars as well. So absolutely, that doesn't mean we're starting companies down your throat by any trend. In fact, we talk about what was discussed before, that you're most likely to use these skills in a job in a larger organization, and those are most likely the folks to be promoted. Someone that's found a new innovative way for their own business unit and thinking how that grows the larger company. So yes, you're absolutely exposed to it here, no matter what you're doing, because we think there's so many other opportunities to use these skills beyond just starting a company.
Sarika, I'm assuming the same is true at Ross.
Same, absolutely. So we aren't technically in the core curriculum, but it's embedded in many of the courses and electives as well as the programs. And so honestly, I mean, I'll say that almost every MBA student does participate in something entrepreneurial because that's of interest to them. If you are trying to escape it, I suppose you could, but it would be very difficult. because it's embedded. And to Doug's point too, we're trying to show that these skills can be used in any career path, no matter what you do. It will be really beneficial for you to participate in some of the programs.
And I know Carey has a required course in its core curriculum on entrepreneurship. What do you teach in that course?
So we teach, when I started this conversation, I said that we look at the entrepreneurship DNA, which will lead you to either be an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur. So we are purely looking at entrepreneurship and innovation DNA, and that's the reason in innovation we have always been top. What we teach in that course is how do you think like an entrepreneur? One important thing I think we've all kind of missed on this one. If we continue to push, oh, you're going to be an entrepreneur after you graduate, many of the international students who come to our schools cannot be entrepreneurs when they graduate. So they need to get into an entrepreneurship. They need to get a job. That's the reason this program, ours, is a STEM certified program. And then they need to get into, and then they may decide to become an entrepreneur down the road. So looking at the large international students that come to us, if we teach them how to think like an entrepreneur, it'll be like teaching them how to fish rather than giving them a fish, and they will benefit it even 2 years, 3 years down the road.
Right. Because I know that a lot of students, the vast majority of students, obviously do not start a company in an MBA program. And many who do it as a side hustle. But that's not to say that 5 years down the road, even 10 years down the road, they don't go out and try to do their own thing, which many people do. Let's go to, what advice do you have for someone interested in your program? If I'm interested in coming to the Carey School of Business, what should I know and who should I contact? And how should I move forward?
So contact information is right on the page, but if you're coming to the MBA program, if you're saying that I need an MBA and that MBA is going to make me an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur, don't come to us. If you're coming in and saying that the world is changing around me, the companies are looking for entrepreneurial mindset, I can be an entrepreneur. Innovation, entrepreneurship is what's going to be the core of the country as a whole. And if you're looking for that new flavor MBA, because our MBA is evolving. I'm assuming old ways of MBA teaching is gone out of the window. If you're coming to an ever evolving MBA program that thinks about entrepreneurship and innovation as a skill set, this is the right place for you.
Great. Sarika, your advice for someone interested in the program at Ross?
Sure. So yeah, so happy to speak with anyone. They can contact us through our website. But I would say find a current student or a recent alum and talk to them, because they will have the best stories to share, best experiences, and be able to answer your questions, I think, much better from their perspective.
Yeah, and visit campus if you can.
And visit campus, yes.
Yes.
In the spring for us, maybe not right now.
In the winters for us.
Ah, yes.
We'll create a tour. So go there in the winter, come here in the spring or fall.
Four-season tour. Doug, your advice?
Well, real quick, the weather in St. Louis depends on the day. So because we've had both of their climates in the last 2 weeks, so it just depends. But we can't help you if we don't know who you are. So contact us through the site. Start talking with our recruiters. Ask them who are some students that I can talk to, and who are some professors that I can talk to. And it goes back to that little hint I gave earlier, John, that we can't tee this. I mean, we could tee it up for you, but you have to swing. So you have to get out there and hustle a little bit and create some conversations and get some things started. But it starts through the recruiters in our admissions office.
Great. Well, listen, thank you for participating here and spending your time with us. I really appreciate it. I think we covered a lot of ground. I think we did kind of answer, do you need an MBA to be an entrepreneur? The answer is probably not, but boy, it would really help, and it would decrease the risk involved in launching a new business, which is considerable and formidable. So thank all of you, Doug, Sarika and Professor Chaturvedi, thank you for your time.
Thank
Enjoyed
you.
the conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
And for all of you out there, this is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for watching.